Somewhere in your life, there is a door you've walked past every day. You don't open it. You don't speak about it. But you feel it, like a breath you never finish, like a weight you've grown used to carrying. Behind that door lives a version of you that you never meant to become. Not evil, not broken. Just tired, addicted to comfort, ruled by little escapes. Loyal to patterns that once protected you but now keep you from yourself. And the hardest part, you've made peace with it. You've convinced yourself it's just the way I am. You've stopped questioning it, because questioning it would mean change. And change means letting go of who you were. But what if the vice holding you back isn't loud? What if it's hidden, not the dramatic failures, but the small compromises, the second helpings? The white lies, the hours you scroll because facing your thoughts feels heavier than ignoring them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If that's true, then what thoughts have you allowed to stain you? Today's story is not about guilt, it's about recognition. It's about finally seeing what you've been justifying and learning how to strip it of its power, not with punishment, but with clarity. Because what Stoic philosophy offers you is not a quick fix, but a slow, steady unbecoming of the person your vices have been shaping in the dark. This is not about being perfect. It's about becoming honest. Honest enough to say, I've tolerated this too long. I've made room for what weakens me. I'm ready to live from a deeper place. So let this be the first act, not of judgment, but of return. You will not conquer your vices with violence. You will outgrow them with truth, and the truth starts here. Welcome to the part of the story where you stop asking how long you've been stuck and start asking how far you're willing to rise. The hidden vice you keep ignoring. It's not always the obvious thing that holds you back, not the outbursts, not the addictions everyone can name, not the moments you regret loudly, no. The most dangerous vice is quiet, polite. It blends in with your personality. It wears the mask of just how I am, and you let it stay because it's never loud enough to confront, only soft enough to excuse. It might be how you avoid discomfort by joking through pain, how you turn every conflict into silence, how you say yes to others to avoid the weight of your own no, or how you numb the day with habits that feel harmless until you add them up. This vice doesn't threaten you. It befriends you. It tells you it's protecting you, that you've earned it, that you'll fix it soon. And because it never burns, you never run. But you stay in the same cycles, the same self-talk, the same diluted version of who you could be, not because you can't change, but because you've grown comfortable with your cage. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." What he didn't say, but what you're ready to realize, is that sometimes the thing beyond your control is the version of you that refuses to take responsibility. That hidden vice, it thrives when you stop paying attention. When you mistake familiarity for alignment. When you think survival is the same thing as wholeness, but you know better now. You feel better is possible. So this is where the story turns, not with drama, but with awareness, that still moment when you finally see it, call it by name, and quietly decide, I'm not going to let this smallness define me any longer. Because you don't need to fight the hidden vice, you need to stop feeding it. And that begins with one simple act, looking at it long enough to finally see yourself without it. Chapter 1. The Mirror That Doesn't Flatter. In every tale worth telling, there's a moment when the hero sees themselves clearly, not in the eyes of others, not in the praise or blame of the world, but in the silence of a reflection that cannot be lied to. And so it is with you. At the edge of your habits, where the excuses begin to blur, there stands a mirror. It is not gold-framed. It does not shine. It does not reward. It simply reveals. You stand before it not by chance, but because the time for pretending has ended. You're ready, maybe for the first time, to see who you've been when no one else was watching. And this mirror doesn't flatter. It doesn't reflect your best intentions, only your repeated choices. The scrolls at midnight. The words left unsaid, the anger you called passion, the comfort you mistook for peace. It shows you how many times you've betrayed your deeper knowing. Not out of malice, but out of habit. Not because you didn't care, but because you didn't pause. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself, "Am I doing what I was born to do?" It's not a grand question. It's a quiet one. And when asked in front of this mirror, it lands differently, because here your image does not argue. It doesn't defend, it just waits for you to acknowledge what you've outgrown. You may feel shame. Let it pass. You may feel grief. Let it teach you. You may feel resistance. Let it speak, because what the mirror offers is not condemnation. It is a gift, the gift of honest beginning. This is not about what's wrong with you. It's about what's ready to be seen, and in being seen, released. You've spent enough time avoiding your own gaze, telling yourself you're doing fine, that someday you'll fix it, that one more week of this won't matter. But it does, because every delay is a quiet vote for who you no longer wish to be. The Stoics didn't believe in running from discomfort. They believed in walking through it with open eyes, because clarity, real, unflinching clarity, is the first act of freedom. So you stand before the mirror, not in shame, but in reclaiming, and as you look, really look, you see not just the patterns, but the possibility. You see the strength you've buried beneath permission. You see the honesty you've muted to keep others comfortable. You see the you that could emerge if you were just willing to stop performing and start becoming. This is where the real work begins, not with willpower, but with truth. And truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. Not in this mirror, not in you. Chapter 2. The Fire That Only Burns Falsehoods. And so, after the mirror shows what can no longer be denied, you walk a little slower, a little quieter, not because you are unsure, but because something inside you is beginning to awaken. The truth now seen has weight, and it begins to burn, not in anger, not in shame, but in a deep, steady warmth, the kind of heat that knows what must be released. You come upon a clearing. No grand temple, no guide, only a circle of stones, and in its center, a fire. It doesn't roar, it doesn't reach, it just burns. Calm, clean, waiting. This is not an ordinary fire. It does not warm the body. It doesn't devour wood or dry leaves. This fire burns falsehoods. Only the lies you've told yourself will catch here. Only the masks. Only the performances. Only the excuses you've dressed up as personality. You step closer, and something in you resists, because to cast those things into the flame is to admit they were never truly yours. The procrastination you've worn like a comfort blanket, the sarcasm you've used to shield your vulnerability, the indulgences you've justified as self-care when they were actually self-sabotage. All of it, false layers, paper thin, but heavy when carried too long. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And here, standing before the fire, you understand, the adversity was never the world. It was the part of you that keeps choosing delay over discipline, numbing over clarity, habit over honor. You reach into yourself, not your pockets, not your past, but into the quiet, hidden pockets of your mind, and one by one, you take them out. I'm not ready. I'm too broken. It's not that bad. No one will know. You hold them like fragile things, because in a way they are. They've kept you company in dark places. They've made the unbearable feel survivable, but now they've overstayed their purpose. And so you offer them to the fire, not with a flourish, not with a performance, just with a slow, trembling hand and a quiet, enough. They catch quickly. Falsehoods always do. They burn without smoke. They vanish without a trace, and in their absence, you feel something strange, not regret, but space. The space your honesty has been waiting to fill. This fire doesn't change you. It reveals you. It peels back what was never yours. So the real you, the you not ruled by vice, not hidden beneath performance, can breathe. Epictetus reminded us, it is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And here beside this fire, your opinions about yourself begin to shift. You are not weak, you've just been carrying too much that doesn't belong to you. Too many borrowed beliefs, too many unexamined patterns, and now the letting go has begun. You do not leave this fire with a new identity. You leave with fewer false ones. That's the difference. That's the work. This chapter does not end with applause. It ends with ash. The quiet kind, the kind that tells you something unnecessary is gone, and ahead, something essential is waiting to grow in its place. Chapter 3. The Lake of Stillness. And after the fire, there is quiet, not silence, but stillness, the kind that follows release. The kind that doesn't rush to replace what's been burned, the kind that allows space for something new to emerge. You walk with bare feet now. Not because you must, but because you no longer fear feeling the ground beneath you. You no longer need the layers that once kept you disconnected. Soon, the trees open, and there it is, a lake, so still it reflects the sky perfectly. So quiet it almost seems unreal, but it is real, and it waits for you. This is not a place of action. This is a place of observation. The Stoics knew this space well. They didn't run from urges or impulses. They sat with them. They watched them rise without letting them rule. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." And here, beside this still lake, you begin to understand what he meant. Because to sit with your own restlessness, your own hunger, your own patterns, without trying to soothe them, without immediately reaching for distraction, takes courage. It is easier to react, to scroll, to snack, to lash out, to escape into noise and novelty. But here, the lake asks you to stay, to watch, to notice. The urge is not the problem. The impulse is not the enemy. The issue is your refusal to witness it, to sit with the energy of craving without turning it into action. You kneel by the water. You do not touch it. You only breathe, and in that breath, you feel it. The stirring, the twitch, the familiar itch to do something. Anything. This is the moment that breaks most people. Not because it's unbearable, but because they've never learned to wait. You do. You sit in the discomfort like it's a language you're finally willing to learn. You don't judge it. You don't fight it. You let it be, and something changes. The urgency begins to lose its grip. The feeling peaks and then fades, not because you suppressed it, but because you saw it. And now that it's been seen, it no longer needs to control you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is that strength. Not the strength to overpower the world, but the strength to sit with yourself without flinching, to feel an emotion without becoming it. to sense a temptation without feeding it, to meet your most primal self with stillness. The lake teaches without speaking. Its message is quiet but clear. You are not your feelings. You are the space that holds them. And the moment you learn to hold them without reacting, you are free. You rise from the edge slowly, not changed in the eyes of others, but deeply shifted within. You understand now that mastery is not suppression. It is attention, patience, choice. And as you leave the lake behind, you carry something more powerful than control: clarity. The kind that doesn't need applause, only presence, only practice. Only the willingness to return again and again to that still place inside you, where nothing needs to be fixed, just witnessed, just felt, just allowed to pass. Chapter 4. The Stone of Non-Reaction. And after the stillness, after you've sat with your own urges and watched them rise, watched them soften, you step forward with a steadier kind of quiet. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. The noise doesn't press as close. The tension doesn't climb so fast. But the next lesson comes not in silence. It comes in friction. You don't walk far before you find it. A single stone rests in the middle of the path. Not large, not ornate, but solid. Unmoving, worn smooth from the storms that have struck it again and again, and yet it does not crack. It does not speak, it simply endures. You stop in front of it. Something in you knows this is not just a stone, it is a symbol, a reminder. Of what? Of the strength found in not reacting. Marcus Aurelius said, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." You remember the last time someone said something that cut deep, the email that triggered a spiral, the glance that stirred a story in your mind. The hunger to be right, the need to be defended, the heat that rose in your chest when the world didn't go your way. This stone has known all of that and refused to be moved. It is not weakness to remain unmoved. It is discipline. It is power directed inward. You kneel beside it, and slowly you place your hand on its surface. Cold, still, steady in a way that you are only beginning to understand. This is what the Stoics practice daily, a kind of emotional training that most never attempt, not to suppress their reactions, but to delay them long enough to choose, to pause, to assess, to ask, is this within my control? Is this worthy of my energy? Does this reaction reflect who I want to become? Most of the time, the answer is no. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And this stone, sitting quietly on your path, echoes that truth without saying a word. So you practice, in small, sacred ways. The next time you are triggered, you do not defend. You breathe. The next time you're tempted to lash out, you listen instead. The next time someone projects their storm onto you, you remain the stone. Grounded, present, unshaken. This is not passivity. This is restraint, the rarest kind of strength, because anyone can react. It takes courage to remain conscious. You rise from the stone with a new understanding that the world will keep pushing. People will speak without thinking. Life will throw wind, heat, insult, noise, but you have seen what it means to hold your center. Not to prove anything, not to look impressive, but because you know, when you no longer react out of habit, you begin to respond from wisdom. And that shift, though invisible, changes everything. You walk forward now with a stillness not dependent on silence. You've found the place within you that no longer flinches. And from here, your next step is no longer controlled by the world. It's chosen. Chapter 5. The Storm Without a Name. And so you walk, with the memory of the stone still warm in your hand, a symbol of your growing strength. You are no longer carried by the winds of impulse. You are choosing, step by step, to move through life on your own terms, but every path worth walking carries its test. And just ahead you hear it before you see it, a hush that isn't silence, a pressure in the air that doesn't come from sound. Then it breaks, the sky darkens, but not from rain. From something more familiar, more personal. A storm brews, not above, but within. Doesn't come with thunder, it comes with thoughts, old ones. You're still not enough. Who do you think you're fooling? You'll always fall back into it. They come not as lightning bolts, but as whispers. Ones you've heard too many times to ignore. Ones that sound a little too much like your own voice. This is the storm without a name. Because naming it would weaken it, and it does not want to be weakened. It wants to remain vague, emotional, unseen, so that it can rule you from the shadows. Seneca once warned, if you do not know to which port you are sailing, no wind is favorable. And in this storm, you forget your direction, not because you've lost your way, but because the voice of the past starts pretending to be your guide again. The old vice, the one you've worked so hard to unhook, it reappears. Not as behavior, but as doubt. And this is where most people turn back. Not because they failed, but because they mistook the storm for the truth. But you remember, this storm has no name because you've never named it. You've only felt it, feared it, fed it with your silence, and now you stop walking. You stand still in the swirl, and you say it out loud, the thing you've been avoiding, the pattern you've been downplaying, the vice you've minimized for years. You say it, not to shame it, but to shrink it. Because the moment you give it shape, you take away its power, anger, envy, procrastination, lust, gluttony, self-doubt. Whatever yours is, you speak it, and in doing so, the storm begins to break. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like fog thinning in morning light. Marcus Aurelius said, if it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. And now you understand what that means. Not endure in silence, but endure with awareness, with clarity, with presence. You do not run from the storm. You walk through it, naming what was once unnamed, owning what was once hidden. Holding your ground not because you're fearless, but because you're ready. And slowly the wind calms, the air lightens. The thoughts retreat, not defeated but disarmed, because you didn't deny them, you faced them. And now they no longer define you. You stand there for a moment, bare and honest and unshaken. This was not the end of your vice, but it was the end of pretending you didn't know its name. And that is when change becomes real. When the storm can no longer move you because it has already passed through you. Chapter 6. The quiet practice that builds resistance. And once the storm has passed, once you've spoken its name aloud and watched it dissolve like mist, there is no great applause, no drum roll, just the sound of your own breath, steady and clear. You have survived something ancient, and now you must practice staying free. There is a myth that change arrives like lightning. That once you've had a breakthrough, you are made new forever. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that real transformation isn't found in single moments. It is carved slowly, through quiet practice, through unseen choices, through showing up when no one else knows you're trying. This is the chapter of rhythm, of repetition, of resistance, built one quiet act at a time. You come to a small grove, half forgotten, a place where nothing moves quickly and nothing needs to. Here, a bench waits beside a tree older than memory. It does not speak, it only invites. You sit, and here, without storm, without fire, without mirror or test, you realize something rare. You don't need a crisis to change. You only need consistency. Epictetus taught, freedom is the fruit of discipline. The person who is free is the one who lives as they choose, not as they crave. And discipline in this sacred place is not harsh, it is gentle. Repetitive, deliberate. You wake up, you write, you reflect, you act. You hold back when anger rises. You pause before indulgence. You choose the hard thing over the easy excuse. Not once, every day. This is not dramatic, which is why so few keep doing it. But in these quiet acts, you begin to rebuild the self your vice tried to erode, the part of you that chooses awareness over escape, clarity over reaction, direction over distraction. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be steady. The Stoics weren't trying to look strong. They were trying to become strong by showing up to the same inner battle every morning and refusing to be ruled by impulse. Seneca said, "Every day as it comes should be welcomed and treated as if it were the very one we had longed for." And so you treat today that way, not because everything is perfect, but because this is the field where resilience is grown. Not in speeches, in repetition, in putting down the glass of wine when no one's watching, in turning off the noise and facing your own discomfort, in doing the small act of virtue, not to be good, but to become whole. You will fail sometimes. That is not the point. The point is whether you return, because every time you return to your path, your values grow roots. And the deeper the roots, the less likely you are to be moved by the next storm, the next urge, the next lie that says it doesn't matter. It matters. Your choices matter, even the invisible ones. Especially the invisible ones. And so you rise from the bench, not with a vow, not with pressure, but with rhythm in your bones and quiet in your chest. This is the practice. This is the resistance. And in this chapter, you are no longer reacting to your vices. You are outgrowing them, step by step, choice by choice, day by sacred day. Chapter 7. The map that draws itself through discipline. And after the quiet practice takes root, after your steps begin to carry rhythm, not resistance, something begins to shift, not loudly, but unmistakably. You no longer feel lost, not because you have all the answers, but because you're starting to walk with intention. The map has not appeared in your hands, but it has begun to form under your feet with every steady act. Every refusal to obey the old voice, every time you choose the path of clarity over comfort, a new line is drawn. This is the map that draws itself through discipline. And you begin to see that direction was never something to be given. It was something to be earned through consistency, through attention, through choosing again and again what aligns even when no one is watching. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You no longer ask, what should I do? You act. You no longer wait for a mood to motivate you. You move. You are becoming less dependent on how you feel and more anchored in who you're becoming. There's a kind of dignity in that, a groundedness. You no longer sprint in one direction, only to collapse the next day. You walk. You rest. You return. Discipline, you now understand, is not punishment, it's devotion. It's a quiet honoring of your future self, because you've seen what happens without it. You've lived the life built on reaction, driven by impulse, shaped by temporary escapes. And now you're building something different, something more enduring, more real. You don't call it a map, but it is one. Each time you say no to a small indulgence, each time you pause before you speak, each time you trade comfort for alignment, a new path takes form beneath you, one that bends not toward ease but toward purpose. Seneca said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." And so you simplify, you commit, you put down the scattered distractions and pick up your principles. You realize that every no to your vice is a yes to something deeper, something clearer, something that does not fade when the mood shifts or when the day disappoints. You are no longer looking to the horizon for clarity. You are finding it in the very ground beneath your feet, in your morning ritual, in your restrained reply, in the decision to rest, not out of laziness, but with intention. This is how the Stoics lived. Not loudly, not perfectly, but with direction. And now you are doing the same. Not chasing what feels good in the moment, but creating a life that feels right over time. You walk this road without fanfare, but the path knows you. It expands beneath your steps, it honors your effort, and it leads you quietly toward the kind of self-respect that cannot be taken because it is built. Brick by brick, choice by choice, the map now is part of you. Not something you carry, but something you become. Chapter 8, The Return to the Gate. And so, the map has formed beneath your steps. The winds have passed. The fire has cooled, the mirror no longer startles. You've walked through impulse, through silence, through steady repetition. And now, without realizing it, you've returned to the place where the journey began. The gate looks different now. Not because it has changed, but because you have. You remember how it looked at the beginning, a place of unknowns, a threshold guarded by fear, shadowed by hesitation. You were unsure, full of reasons to wait, full of beliefs about who you were and who you could never be. But now you see clearly, that version of you no longer walks beside you. It was not destroyed, it was outgrown. This is the quiet triumph of the Stoic path. No one will cheer, no one may even notice. But you feel it in how you breathe, how you pause, how you respond instead of react, how you choose alignment over approval, how you carry stillness where you once carried shame. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The vices that once blocked your path have become the path, not because they disappeared, but because you faced them without flinching." And now, as you stand before the gate, you no longer beg for it to open. You don't force, you don't plead. You understand now. The gate was never locked. It only required someone ready to walk through it without needing to be someone else. You are not perfect, but you are present. You are not immune to temptation, but you are aware of it. And that awareness, that willingness to see without hiding, that is everything. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." You are learning mastery, not through control, but through honest alignment. You no longer fight your vices in the shadows. You meet them in the open, with clarity, with calm, with strength earned through practice. You walk through the gate, not as the hero with a crown, but as the one who knows the cost of becoming and paid it. There is no music, no bright finale, just a life that finally fits your soul. And as the wind brushes your shoulder, the same wind that once unsettled you, you no longer turn away. You walk with it because now it does not sway you, it moves around you. And far behind you, the old self watches, not with anger, not with envy, but with peace, because it was never your enemy, it was your beginning. And now you've returned home, but not to the place you came from, to the person you were always meant to become. And now, the journey quiets, not because it's over, but because it has become yours. You've faced the voice you once ignored. You've stood still in the fire. You've named what held you down. You've chosen rhythm over impulse. And step by step, you've rewritten the story of who you are, not with noise, not with perfection, but with presence. Your vice no longer rules you, not because it vanished, but because you no longer obey it blindly. You've returned to the gate, not to start again, but to walk forward with eyes open, heart steady, and hands that no longer cling to who you used to be. And if this journey spoke to something in you, something buried but still burning, something quiet but deeply alive, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the Stoic Philosophy. This channel is more than ideas. It's a place for you to remember your strength, to return to your values, to walk beside others choosing the same quiet courage. Watch the next video. Let your growth continue, not in leaps, but in deliberate steps. And know this, you are not alone, you are not behind. And you are not who you were, you are becoming, and the path is listening.